Welcome back to this edition of Aging with Grace 55 Plus. I'm your host, Dale Josie. And today, my guest is a wonderful and very intriguing woman, I must say. She's part of, and actually is her vision as a co-founder of the Hildegard House. She's the executive director of the Hildegard House, which was named after a 12th century German Benedictine Saint Hildegard, who was an herbalist, mystic, musician, writer, doctor of the church. And with that said, welcome to Aging with Grace, Karen Cassidy. How are you
Thank you,
today?
Dale. I'm great today. Thank you for asking.
Well,
How are
absolutely.
you?
I'm good. I'm really good. It's
Good,
a great
good.
day, and it's always fun to talk to people who also have a vision for doing really neat things as you have done. We're going to get a little bit into your mission with the Hildegard House, but in 2014, you, a co-member of the Sisters of Loreto and a palliative care nurse, you brought your dream to this convent. So, what is the Hildegard House? Kind of give us a overview, if you will, madam.
So I do have to tell you, it's the Sisters of Loretto,
Yes.
and they are in Loretto, Kentucky, and they were very inspiring to me. So I just want to make sure that we know that.
Hmm.
Um, as a palliative care nurse practitioner doing consulting in one of our community hospitals, um, as the palliative care consult team, I saw lots of people that needed hospice care at the
Mm.
end of their life.
Okay.
They were there wasn't anything else that could be done for them in the hospital. And they were either homeless or they didn't have a family that could provide care for them for 24/7.
Wow.
Or they didn't have enough resources to pay for caregivers. So at that time, the only option, there's a gap there in healthcare, and the only
Mhm.
option was to send them home.
Mm.
So the gap was these individuals that couldn't access hospice care,
Hmm.
and the hospice Medicare benefit is part of your insurance that provides care for you at the last 6 months of your life.
Hmm.
But not everybody can access that benefit.
Yeah.
Because hospice was built on family caregiving and support.
Well, I like the idea, excuse me, sorry. I like the idea that of your mission, which is to provide a home and compassionate care for individuals at the end of life who have no home or loved ones to care for them so they may die with dignity. What a horrible prospect, and how thankful we are that the Hildegard House is there to provide this service.
Yeah. Um, that's exactly our mission. And you will notice it doesn't have anything in our mission about medical care. Because we are a home and a family.
Hmm.
And because the individuals that live with us do have the right to that insurance benefit, hospice comes here and provides that access to hospice services to them.
Okay.
And so they are the medical providers, and we are the family, just like at home. So they send a hospice team, a nurse once a week or so,
Hmm.
uh, a bed, a bath aide to provide uh, a bath once a week or so. But we are the individuals, our residents, families. We fix meals for them. We do their laundry. We give them their medicine. We sit by their bed when they're dying. We watch TV with them, or we just are there if they want
Mm.
someone to be with.
Well, let's talk about physically the house itself. When you guys moved in, you had to do a lot of renovation. I understand the old hardwood floors were there, and you had
Yeah,
old iron radiators, I
we
read
had to move all
somewhere.
those out. Yes.
Yeah.
So the house, we have two houses now, but this original house, the Ursuline sisters lived in when they taught at St. Joseph's Elementary School.
Hmm.
And it was built in the early 1900s. So there's a very nice spirit in here.
Mm.
And When they stopped teaching over there, it was empty for a little while, and then the parish used it as a daycare. And then it was empty for maybe 5 more years, and then we purchased it from the parish.
Hmm.
So we are a separate standalone 501c3.
Well, I love this concept of the mother house.
Yeah.
What is that exactly?
So last September, we opened up another house with we have 3 rooms in the mother house and 3 rooms at Hildegard on Story, which is our new house. So when our second house opened, we had to have a name for this first house. And our compassionate companions, our volunteers, started calling this house the Mother House, which
Hmm.
is very sweet because it is what orders of sisters call the place where they start, where they get educated, where they go back to. So they all sisters have a mother house. So sometimes I think about Hildegard House as our little monastery, our modern
Hmm.
day monastery, and that
Hmm.
the compassionate companions that provide care are like little monks in the world. And they come here and do their service, and they, provide this sacred time with someone. And
Yeah.
but that's where the name Mother House came from.
So let's dig in a little bit into that because I want to make sure our listeners, who are hopefully enjoying this interview as much as I am with Karen Cassidy, Executive Director of the Hildegard House, I want to dig into the history a little bit because how many years was it a convent and how old is the house?
The house was built in the early 1900s.
Hmm.
So the Ursuline sisters came to teach German immigrants. They were a German order too. And so in Butchertown were a lot of German immigrants. So they came to teach them English. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have training rooms, you've got offices, laundry, storage room, you're feeding people. I mean, this is amazing. How many residents do you have there on average, Karen?
And we provide care in the mother house for 3 residents at a time. And in Hildegard on Story, there are 3 more rooms there. So 6 at a time.
Hmm.
The average length of stay is 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay.
So I often get the question, you only can care for 3 people at a
Y-
time?
Well, I was trying to get my head around that
Yeah,
six, right? It's six
yeah.
in total. Yeah.
But providing care for someone at the end of life can be time consuming, right?
Hmm.
You don't want to leave someone alone when they're dying. And so we have 2 volunteers at a time that are here. And
Well,
they're called
go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your thought, Karen. I'm sorry. They're called.
they're called compassionate companions.
Hmm.
It's
Volunteers. They're
Mhm.
volunteers.
Yes, they're all volunteers. Yeah, it takes 42 volunteers a week to staff one house.
Wow.
Yeah, so they
Wow.
commit to a 5-hour shift a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
42 volunteers. Not to be crass, but when you said three, six people at a time, I was thinking six, really? Considering how many homeless people there are, how many people are dying without dignity and compassion.
Mhm.
But the corollary to that is those are 6 people whose souls you guys are truly touching in the sea of humanity.
Yeah, and when we hit the mother house, it's about 50 a year.
50 a year. Hmm.
Yeah. So um the you know really, Dale, it's miraculous that Hildegard House can do the service we do. If you think about it, we
Hmm.
don't charge anything.
Mm. So,
Provide
no,
care just through volunteer service.
wow.
And the number of hours, if you count, if you calculate the number of hours volunteers provide, and then you can use what the federal government allows you to use for, what what it would cost,
Yeah.
and it's about maybe, $22 an hour, but we figured out it's $1.3 million a year of healthcare dollars or caregiving dollars that we provide free.
Karen, I'd be remiss if I didn't give our listeners and viewers your website for the
Oh, great.
Hildegard House. Go ahead.
It's www.hildegardhouse.org. Hildegard. Hildegardhouse.org.
So, what is the source of your funds?
80% of our funding comes from individual donations. So the
80%.
community supports us,
Mhm.
We receive lots of in-kind donations. Since we've opened, we've never bought a roll of toilet paper. So
During COVID, I should have gone to your place
yeah, you
because it
should
was
have found
scant
us. Yeah,
supply. People go to your website, Karen, they'll see, and as we go to our close, they'll see a maple tree which was destined to be a sculpture in your court. Is that in your courtyard, or where is that
it's
on
a
the property?
that wasn't the playground for the school.
Hmm.
And when we first opened, it was all rocks, rubber peanuts for a playground. And we've turned it into a courtyard garden.
Hmm.
That maple tree was here since the house was built. So it was, 100 years old or so. And as everything does, started dying, chipping away at the top. And I would watch the branches fall and say, we've got to take care of this maple tree just like we're caring for our people that are dying in our home.
Hmm. Oh.
So this fabulous chainsaw artist, Joe Autry, came and we stood there. And I said, do you see it, Joe? We stood there and he put a scaffolding up and made this beautiful sculpture.
It's absolutely beautiful. When you go to and when folks go to your website, they'll be able to see that magnificent sculpture. It's very touching. It's passion. There's a lot of passion when I look at it, when I see it. Absolutely marvelous work. Last point for you, madam, is this: our friend Scott Wagonist, communications manager for AARP Kentucky, which, as a disclaimer, is also one of a couple of sponsors of this podcast series. He said that you are a former state director, volunteer director for Kentucky AARP.
At one time I was proud to do that. Part of
Yeah.
as a volunteer. Yeah. I'm also an AARP Purpose Prize winner, which I'm very proud of.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know what I
They've been
like?
good to us.
I'm sorry.
They've been good to us.
Yes, they have. They do a they're a great organization for millions
Yeah.
of Kentuckians over age 55, over age 50. And also, as a national organization is with what
Yes.
millions of members, which is
Yes.
amazing that they're here. And speaking of amazing that they're here, Karen Cassidy, thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate you having me and being interested in Hildegard House. And
Absolutely.
I hope all your listeners, viewers, think about those people that are dying alone today.
That's so good. And hopefully they'll take to heart the fact that neighbor is not, in the words of Jesus, the neighbor is not the person next door to us, but it's the people that we encounter according to scripture. And may we all
Yes.
walk in that as you have done in serving your neighbors who are homeless or otherwise neglected. Well done. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a blessed day. Bye bye.
You too.
Welcome back to this special edition of Aging with Grace 55 Plus. And we have a special guest with us who is no stranger to this program, hosted by me, Dale Josie, Aging with Grace 55 Plus. And I'm pleased to welcome our Secretary of State, Michael G. Adams, who has returned to our podcast series to talk about some important dates that are coming up in Commonwealth of Kentucky. And if Michael G. Adams is with us, then you know the topics are important. We're here to talk about the primary and general election cycle that's coming up in a few months from now, May and in November. Without further delay, Michael G. Adams, welcome back to Aging with Grace. How are you?
I'm doing great, Dale. Great to be back. Thanks for doing this.
Well, you're absolutely welcome to be back. And I have to give you kudos, my friend. You won re-election since last time we were together. So you're doing something right here in Kentucky, yes?
Well, I managed to convince 61% of voters of that, so I'll take
Yeah.
it.
Take it. That's a win, especially I think I read somewhere where you carried 118 of 120 counties. That's very impressive given the times that we live in here,
Thank
not
you.
only Kentucky but nationally. So well done. Well
Thank you
done.
very much.
So right off the top, we have some dates that are coming up I want to firmly press in people's minds. One of them is a presidential primary on Tuesday, May 25th. And I understand that
21st.
I'm sorry, May 21st. Excuse me. Thank you very much. And I understand that April 22nd is our first deadline to register to vote. Is that correct? Is that the deadline?
That's right. Under state law in Kentucky, our books close 4 weeks before the election. That's to make sure that we have time to finalize them, to review them, and then ultimately print them and make them available to all the poll workers all across the state. And so elections have deadlines. You have to have those. And so the deadline to register to vote in this May primary is Monday, April 22nd. That's this coming Monday.
Mm-hmm. And then I also understand that, by the way, I'm referencing the AARP website for those who are following along or want to get this information as well. Scott Wegenes, the communications director for Kentucky AARP, has some excellent resource material available at aarp.org/Kentucky/election, as also on your website, too, for the Secretary of State. You have information posted there as well.
That's right. And I want to plug our website,
Please.
govote.ky.gov.
Yeah.
It's the Swiss Army knife of Kentucky elections. You can register to vote there now through Monday, April 22nd. You can check your information that's on file with us if you have registered already, just to make sure that it's right, make sure that your address is correct, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
You can also there volunteer to be a poll worker. You can't have an election without election workers, and we still could use some help in some of our counties. And so if you go to that website, govote.ky.gov, that's where you can volunteer to be a poll worker. You can also register for your absentee ballot there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to vote by absentee ballot, if you qualify, then you've got until May 7th. That's the deadline to request a ballot be mailed to you for you to execute and then return back to your county clerk.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about the absentee balloting process. There's been a lot of misinformation nationally about balloting, about voting in advance, I should say, where ballots can be changed, and that information is really subject to people's machinations, if you will. But that's not true. It's a very safe way to vote, absentee balloting. Yes.
Yeah, we follow all the same protocols for absentee ballots and early voting ballots that are followed for election day ballots. They're all treated the same. They all have the same level of security.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, one of the crazy rumors out there is that somehow we get into these things and we see them before election day. We don't. We're not allowed to. There's seals on these things, and so we do process absentee ballots before the election, meaning we verify the signatures on the envelopes and make sure that it's the voter and not somebody else who's falsifying the voter's identity.
Mm-hmm.
We check those things. And then
Right.
we also take the ballot out and then we run it through a ballot scanner, but we don't zero out the scanner and count that vote until the polls close on election night. And so what that means is we don't get an early peek at how people already voted. We find out when you find out. We all find out together on election night. And the
Yeah.
same goes for the votes that are cast during our early voting days. Those are all tabulated and received, but they're not processed with a number. So we don't know who got how many votes. We just know how many people voted. That's all
Mm-hmm.
that we know until we actually zero the machines out on election night.
We've had the pleasure of interviewing you, as I said at the onset, on previous episodes. And I think you mentioned where in Kentucky you also have a paper ballot as well as electronic. So that way you can always go back and if there is any errors or inconsistencies, is that still the case, Secretary Adams?
Yeah, something I'm really proud of is when I took office, voters in Kentucky, nearly all of them voted on computers, voted on what were called DREs, basically great big computers where you walk in and you push a button and the computer would record your ballot. And
Mhm.
I'm not disputing that those were fair and objective and worked just fine. But the thing I don't like about those is voters want something tactile. They want to physically hold a ballot, physically execute
Yes,
it with a pen or a pencil,
right.
and know that their vote got accurately counted. And better yet, when we run these through the ballot scanners, they don't eat them, they preserve them. They put them into a
Hmm.
little box, and then we can pull those out and double check after the election's over. So,
Hmm.
not to jump ahead of myself, but we actually just got a law passed that's new for this year where we're going to automatically have an audit in every single county in Kentucky after the election, which
Wow.
simply means that we take the paper ballots out of the scanner, out of the little box that they collect them in, and then do a hand-eye count and double check against the machine count, make sure that it was right. We checked the machines before the election, but now we're going to check them after the election too.
If you're doing a hand-eye count, to use your phrase, usually that happens when there's some kind of irregularity. But you're saying this is going to be a standard operating procedure in Kentucky moving forward?
Yeah, it won't be for every ballot because it would take weeks and weeks to do that.
That's what I'm
And
thinking.
it would hold up certification. It would hold up people from being able to campaign after they got nominated. So with this law, which by the way passed just about unanimously with both parties supporting it, what this law provides for is it's randomized. And
Okay.
so I will literally pull names out of a basket, pick out precincts, pick out races in that election, and it'll be random. And so it won't be people that have some grudge and lost their election trying to misuse the process. It'll be randomized and totally neutral and objective for me just to pull names out of a basket and say, we're going to audit the Oakdale precinct in McCracken County, and we're going to check the Secretary of State's race. And we're going to make sure that that ballot scanner was right, that those scanners in that precinct were right. And then we'll go to some other precinct in some other county and check some other race. And when you do it that way, you do it universally, but you also do
Yeah.
it randomly. That means
Yeah.
it's a fair process.
Yeah. I like the fact that it's random like that, so that God forbid if there's a sore loser who wants to gum up the process, he or she cannot do that because it is random in nature, but verifying the findings of the voters. I really like that.
That's
That's well
exactly
done.
right. You know, we had a pretty ugly summer a couple of years ago. We had folks suing for recounts who had lost by massive margins, as much as 76 percentage points in the election. They were
Yikes.
suing us and demanding recounts. So look, I'm all for hand-eye checks to make sure these things are working right, but let's not
Yeah.
do it in an unfair way where
Right.
just the losers get to decide everything. Let's do it randomly.
I really like that. I know our voters do too. There's several ways that you can register to vote in Kentucky. One is by mail, one's in person, and one's online. Can you walk us through those, Secretary Adams?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. My daughter actually just registered to vote
No way.
yesterday, and she did it in person at my office, which was pretty nice.
Oh,
So that's certainly one way to do it. You can go to the county clerk's office, or you can come to my office in the Capitol, or you can go to the State Board of Elections office in Frankfurt, and you can physically, in person, fill out a card. It takes about 30 seconds. It's really easy. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is you can mail in a card. You can pick up a card, take it home with you, and mail it to us. The third way, which is the most popular, is people can go to our website, govote.ky.gov, and register to vote there.
mm-hmm. You know, I saw something which was kind of interesting online, and it said you cannot register to vote on election day. And I can't imagine someone coming in saying, "I want to register to vote today." Has that happened? By that being on your website or wherever I read it, that suggests someone has done that. Have you heard of that happening, Secretary
Well,
Adams?
so some states, only a few, but some states do have same-day registration.
Wow.
Uh, I think that would be problematic.
Yes.
I just don't know. I think it would gum up the lines if you've got people who are there to vote and people who are there to register.
Yeah.
It's just going to make a long line for everybody. So I think you should do this spatially where you have people register and then you have them go vote. And that's how we do it here in Kentucky. And that's how most states do it.
You know, when I'm in line to vote, it always bothers me when someone in front of me is like digging for their ID, right? It's like, should you not be prepared when you walk up to the table? So, can you expedite this for type A personalities like me to make sure that we don't get frustrated by someone digging in the bottom of their purse for their ID? What do they need when they show up, Secretary Adams?
Well, you need your photo ID. That's my fault because I got that law passed, but bring your photo ID. That's about all you're going to need.
Yeah.
But to your point about people being prepared, I want to strongly encourage folks. Now, it's not for this primary because it won't be in the primary, but in
Hmm.
November, we're going to have two constitutional amendments on the ballot.
Okay.
And one of the reasons that we had some lines in some of our counties in 2022 is we had two amendments on the ballot and they were very long.
Yeah.
And voters walked up, they had never read them before, and they were long and they were legalese basically. And it took
Yes.
a long time for them to read these. And some of them went and pulled a poll worker over and said, "What's this mean?" Uh, it would be a smoother day for you as a voter and for everyone else in that line and for the poll workers if you're able to go to our website and you can pull your sample ballot at govote.ky.gov, and you can also read it in advance and see what it's going to say and be prepared. You can see what races are on the ballot. and you can see the language of these amendments. Again, these amendments will be on the ballot in November, not in May, so this is still
Yeah.
a ways away. But
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of walking in prepared, and part of that means seeing your ballot before you actually get your actual physical ballot and vote. You can get your sample ballot on our website.
What a concept. And the thing is, even the thing that kind of bothers me is the fact some of the amendments seem very arcane in the way that they're written. Yes, they'll say like, whereas, ergo, be it resolved that, which coming out of a law firm, I understand that flow of language, but for most voters, I submit that's kind of off-putting. So is there a way that we can break it? Not, this is not your job, of course, but there's a way that can be broken down into everyday language by somebody somewhere?
Unfortunately not. In 2019, our state Supreme Court ruled against my predecessor, the former Secretary of State, and said that she was not able to just simply summarize
Yes,
what the
yeah.
amendments would accomplish. She would have to actually lay out word for word what
Mm.
the changes to the Constitution would be if the amendments were to take effect. And unfortunately, that's meant a lot of legalese on the ballot and some long lines, and it's really unfortunate. But I just don't have the ability to do what she did and just to summarize these and make it simple. But
Yeah.
I do expect that because you've got complicated legal language, that outside groups, the newspapers will cover these amendments, TV stations will cover them, but also the groups who are for and against these amendments will probably have their own summaries as well.
Hmm.
I'm sorry we can't put plain English on the ballot. I don't have that power under a Supreme Court decision.
Sure, that's fair. And I would caution, as you would too, for voters who may be listening to one source or the other, because someone could flavor the amendment to their advantage. So as much as we have a free media, if you will, unbiased is the word I'm trying to look for, as much as we could argue there is or isn't, maybe that's your best source to interpret, or do you look at it? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how do you get your best understanding, Secretary Adams, especially not to be argumentative, but if someone has only a sixth grade education
Well, I'd say
or senior, even a senior, which is served by Kentucky AARP, if I was remiss in saying that.
I would
Sorry.
take in as much information as you can
Yeah.
and understand that when you're taking it in from a pro side and you're taking it in from an anti side, and you're trying to basically uh, take them both at the same time and try to see who you think is right. And
Mhm.
so we've got an amendment that would enable the legislature to provide public funds outside the public school system. And so I am sure that there will be resources made available by the people who support that amendment. There will be resources made available by people who are against that amendment. Look at both. Don't just
Mhm.
listen to one
Right.
side. Be informed by taking in both sides of the argument.
Mhm.
But the best thing that you can do, honestly, is just go read the thing yourself and make your own decision on it.
Last question for you is this: at the onset of our interview, you mentioned the need for poll workers, and I've noticed a lot of those individuals are usually retired or older individuals, which are served by AARP Kentucky. How important are poll workers, and where are you in the process of recruiting them now? And number three, how does someone sign up?
Well, I'll start with the last question first. It's the most important. You can sign up at govote.ky.gov. Takes about 30 seconds just to plug in your name and your contact info, and then we just forward that along to the county clerk so they can contact you. So most of our poll workers have been recruited. There actually is a deadline in the statute. It's passed, but it's a soft deadline, and there's nothing that prevents the clerks from taking more poll workers after the deadline, at least alternates, because people do wake up election morning and they're sick and they have to
Sure,
cancel, and we have to
sure,
replace them.
sure.
So I don't yet have a report from all the clerks. We'll have that closer to the election as to who's fully staffed, who needs some help, and what more we need to do. But what we've done on our part is work with associations. We've worked with the Kentucky Bar Association. Every year I've been here, we've had an agreement with them where they work with us and they actually give continuing legal education credit to attorneys who volunteer to be poll workers. So
Okay.
the attorney gets something out of it,
Yeah.
but we certainly do as well. We have a long-running partnership with the YMCA Youth Association. We both register young voters to vote, but we also then, once they register, ping them and ask them to be poll workers, because our law allows now any Kentucky voter to be a poll worker. And so we have a lot of private things that we do with associations. I'll be talking to the Chamber of Commerce this week to try to get them to press their member businesses to let their employees take some time off to be poll workers without being dinged for that at the office.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of private partnerships. Ultimately, it comes down to the people and whether they're willing to volunteer and step up. You can't have an election without election workers.
Right.
And if every person who has a viewpoint about how we run our elections actually would volunteer and be part of this, we'd have all the poll workers we need.
What a way to end this podcast. I love that. I'm gonna hang it right there, Secretary of State Michael G. Adams. Thank you so much for being our guest on this edition of Aging with Grace 55 Plus. And I think I remember last time we did this, you were with us in the primary, and then we also interviewed you again before the general election, which means I'm looking forward to welcoming you again to another edition of Aging with Grace 55 Plus. Have a great day, sir.
Thanks. Look forward to it. Thank you, Dale.
Bye-bye. Please visit my website, awg55.com, to listen to past episodes of Aging with Grace 55 Plus, including purchasing a deck of 35 oversized playing cards for deeper, more meaningful conversations with the seniors in your life or community.